Hey Brian, I hope you guys all can hear me well. My name is Michael Shalov, and as Brian mentioned, I'm heading products for mobile and cloud security here at Check Point. And I'm going to be your host for today's webinar, Protect Your Enterprise from the Next Security Breach, Mobile Devices. And basically, it's going to be a quick discussion about the evolution of threats to mobile devices and to IT infrastructure in general. And then we're going to present our brand new SandBlast Mobile solution and how it can assist you to protect against those breaches. The first thing that I would like to start with is actually a story that is based on basically true events. It is based on, it's actually inspired by the Gooligan malware that we've discovered towards the end of last year. And over here, we basically have a fictitious company, but that basically falls into the profile of the companies that we discovered that were attacked using the Gooligan malware. So Pharmacare is a global healthcare company that one day the CEO and the CFO figure out that they fell victim to a whaling scam. So the discovery basically came when there was a conversation between the CEO and the CFO where the CEO called the CFO and told him, hey, what's going on? We have a supplier that claims that we didn't pay them 520,000 US dollars. And the CFO told him, what do you mean? We've actually wired the money to their new bank account. And that was the point in time where those guys figure out that their money is gone and they were not going to see their money forever, right? That this money was fraudulently stolen by a gang of cybercriminals. Now, how did this all happen? Basically, it was a typical whale scam, or as we call it, a business email compromise scam, where it started from a malware very similar to Gooligan that was installed by the purchasing manager's eight-year-old son on his phone, right? So the purchasing manager had a BYOD mobile device. He gave it to his son. His son, like all of our kids, take the phone, install whatever the games that they want, and he accidentally installed the malware. Now, this malware, very exactly like Gooligan, had the ability to compromise all the credentials and what we call the authentication tokens of the emails that are configured on the device. Basically all the accounts that are configured on the device were compromised by that malware, and the hackers were able to obtain access to the inbox of the purchasing manager. So they had access, they could log in and manipulate that inbox, and because Pharmacare basically moved their email to the cloud, it was very straightforward for the hackers. So they learned the relationship between how the supplier and the Pharmacare were communicating, how the purchasing department is communicating with the accounting department, and then they actually sent a fake email in behalf of the purchasing manager to the accounting team, telling them that the bank details were changed for that supplier, and that the next wire should actually be transferred to a bank account in the control of the hackers. And that was the point in time where basically the accounting team transferred the money and the money was gone forever. Now, this scenario is actually one of the main scenarios that we're all dealing with. According to a report that was issued by the FBI mid last year, they basically said that compromised business email fraud, like this one, have cost companies more than $2.3 billion in losses over the last 3 years. This is a huge amount of money, and this is right now one of the preferred ways of cyber criminals to steal and compromise corporate funds. Now, another story based on true events is actually a story about a public company where the price of the stock suddenly dropped. And they didn't actually understand how that manipulation occurred and why basically the stock had been damaged. So when you actually analyze what happened is that the CFO of that company 3 weeks earlier went to a conference, and in that conference was a financial conference. In that conference, he actually wanted to download the mobile application where you actually see the agenda for the conference. Very typical thing, I believe that all of us doing it those days when we attend the conference. And basically he went to a stand, he scanned the QR code, and he downloaded an application to his device. Now, unfortunately, that QR code was fake. That conference was actually targeted by the hackers. They knew that it's a financial conference. They knew that CFOs are coming to that conference. And basically, it was straightforward for them to replace the QR code by just sticking a new QR code on top of those signs. And then the hackers basically deployed a Trojanized mobile application on the phone that contained a remote access Trojan. And now they were actually able to tap the phone on the CFO. So they learned the schedule of the CFO, they learned his location, and they basically understood when he's going to attend the board meeting that was just before the public announcement of the quarterly result. They were able to record and analyze the conversations that were taking place in the board meeting, and then they were able to strategically take a position on the stock and gain a lot of money while simultaneously dropping the stock and causing a pretty significant losses to the shareholders of this company. And those are, while clearly we use here fictional names of companies, those are events that actually happened in the last couple of months. Now, the first thing that you probably want to ask yourself is why hackers are targeting mobile devices. And the reason for that is that mobile devices are more vulnerable and simultaneously less protected than PCs from an enterprise standpoint. Now, we all know that hackers go after the point of least resistance. And basically, what we learned is that mobile devices, compared to our PCs, are exactly that target. So let's look on a couple of interesting facts. The first fact is that PCs, we only turn them on when we need them. While mobile devices, they are on 24/7. They are connected. We charge them. We basically feed them with energy whenever they are hungry. PCs we use for business, especially like PCs that are being laptops that are being issued by the company. Most of our employees recognize that it's a company asset. They know that they should mostly conduct business-related activities on those PCs. We can enforce much stronger rules for what they can do and what they can do on those endpoints. While mobile devices, usually, even if they are clearly if they are BYOD devices, but even if they are if those devices are corporate issued, they are always used for both personal and business activity. So during the day, the employee will use it to communicate with his peers, send emails, access corporate applications. But off hours, he'll like chat with his friends, use gaming, dating apps, gambling, and any other kind of activity that he wishes to do. And there is no way for us to actually limit that because this is what people expect to do with their personal device or a device that they perceive as their personal device. And last but not least, when we look on the attack vectors, clearly PCs, the main attack vector is malicious files, right? We see that being used by cybercriminals when they spear phish or phish users using PDFs, Word documents, that kind of payload, those kind of payloads. While on mobile devices, the primary vector is malicious apps. The reason that malicious apps is such a popular vector is because people tend to download hundreds of applications to their mobile device, and they expect to be able to download an application for any particular use case that they have in mind. So specifically, if you have a use case of or basically a need to find a good restaurant in Barcelona, you will download a specific application that lets you search for restaurants in Barcelona. And this is very normal. So mobile apps are the preferred attack vectors for mobile devices. Now, from protection standpoint, on Windows or PC-based machines, we have already decades of understanding and policies of how to protect those machines. Not saying that it's perfect, but at least we have something. Most of the laptops today or desktops today have an anti-malware solution installed of them, an anti-malware solution that is managed by the enterprise that is up to date. Whether it's your traditional AV or next generation security solution, anti-malware solution, doesn't really matter for this particular argument, but at least we have something. In addition, clearly with desktops, but also with laptops, we have network protection. We are able to filter the traffic which comes and goes to those devices. And while all that is true for desktops and laptops, it's not true for mobile devices. Most organizations today, they have no solution for cyber protection to mobile devices, whether endpoint-based or network-based. We have nothing that looks, most of us have nothing that looks into the potentially malicious activity on those devices. So effectively, we are blind. Which, in the end of the day, assuming that you guys did some investment in your network security, mobile devices, they are the new window for cyber criminals to get into your corporate network. Now, beyond the stories, let's look about a couple of real, more sort of practical issues that we need to understand when we come to protect mobile devices. The first thing is really what are the vectors or how mobile devices are being infected. So there are four main vectors for attacking mobile devices. The first one is infected apps. This is like 90% of the attacks that we are seeing on mobile devices being delivered using malicious mobile applications. The stunning figure over there is that almost every new campaign that we see that is basically mobile malware campaign infects, when it's like a mass campaign, we see infections in the millions, like 2 million, 5 million, and 10 million are not figures that are figures that we commonly see. Okay, so mobile malware has a practical and non-theoretical propagation of millions of infections. In addition, we also see quite a lot of network attacks. So basically, when you go to the airport or to a hotel and you really need to send that email very quickly, you connect to the Wi-Fi, you don't really look what Wi-Fi you're connecting to, you shoot that email, but in that Wi-Fi, especially if it's targeted, you can experience a man-in-the-middle attack that either compromise your communication or we try to install something on your phone. In addition, hackers have leveraged OS exploits, which are super popular for Android devices. We also see them in the form of jailbreaks to iOS devices. They nowadays embed those exploits into malicious mobile applications, and that actually allows them to get full control over a mobile device. And last but not least are SMS attacks. So SMS became a super popular vector for sending phishing messages and basically tricking the user to submit credentials or any other private or personal information. And it's actually pretty quickly replaces emails. So once a mobile device is infected, the potential damage is huge. Hackers can break into the corporate network, they can snoop over emails, they can steal passwords and credentials. Some of the things that we already reviewed in the previous example. But not only that, they can also take control over the different sensors on the mobile device, they can track the location of the employee, and clearly they can eavesdrop, they can leverage the microphone to record important meetings and to tap into conversations that are not even being documented. Now, this was like the evolution of attacks over the last couple of years on mobile devices. So we've seen hackers sort of moving and shifting from attacking PCs into mobile devices, gaining more and more expertise. And that basically led to the situation that most of the enterprises today are actually already compromised with mobile malware. So the question that I usually being asked by a customer is, okay, so really, this all sounds like super scary. what are the actual figures that you guys see in the customers that you're protecting or the customers that you're working with. So we run that experiment, right? It's like a very legit question to basically understand the average risk across an enterprise population. So we run. So now we actually came to the point where we have enough statistics. We have more than 850 customers, Check Point customers, that are using our mobile threat defense solution, our cybersecurity solution for mobile devices. And what we actually did, we looked on the customers that deployed more than 500 devices, because we think that 500 devices, it sort of like represents the smaller ones and clearly to the biggest ones, right? And within those customers, 100% of the customers had a mobile malware installed before they deployed a solution. They had at least one mobile device in their environment that was already infected, with, by the way, an average of 54 devices per customer. So 54 devices per customer, that's a pretty significant number of infection rate for a single customer. 89% of the customers, once they deploy the solution and they gain visibility into man-in-the-middle attacks, 89% of them have experienced an attempt to conduct a man-in-the-middle attack against at least one of the mobile devices in their enterprise. And when they deployed our solution, 70% of the customers had at least one device that was jailbroken or rooted, where for some reason the mobile management system that they were using was unable to detect it. And the average was actually 35 devices per customer. So we're talking here about, on average, compromises that are in the tens, right? And we all know that it's enough for only one device, one employee to be breached in order for the hackers to gain complete control of the enterprise and get in. So the situation is quite. I would say that the situation in the wild is already quite significant, and if that's not all, then we also see basically a new movement of cybercriminals and another shift in how cybercriminals behave. And this is actually like a very timely discussion about an example of a group that is called APT28, or also known as Fancy Bear. So those are the guys that, presumably we all know who they are, that breached the Democratic Party in the United States over the last elections. Arguably, those are also the guys that targeted the French elections last week and was able to breach the computers of key people in Macron's party. We all know that those guys, like the very sort of like popular incidents that those guys were involved in, clearly they were breaching PCs, cloud-based email services. But if you didn't hear about it, here are another two interesting facts. First of all, those guys also deployed an Android malware on soldiers in the Ukrainian army. So all the artillery units of the Ukrainian army was infiltrated by an Android malware that those guys have developed, disseminated, and deployed, and were able to gain critical intelligence about the movement of the Ukrainian artillery. In addition, in 2015 and 2016, they were tracked of using an iOS malware to target NATO personnel. Now, the picture that you can actually see over here, that while those guys were using 3 or 4 different malware, each one fine-tuned for a specific different platform, all of those malware had actually the same indication of compromise, and in certain points in time, they were actually talking with a very similar command and control backend, if not the same command and control backend. So clearly, if you are able to correlate the indication of compromise across all of those platforms, the first attack that you see, the patient zero, using the IOCs that you extract from there, you can immunize the entire system. So this, I would say, shift in how the cyber criminals, or basically the adversaries, operate is quite interesting, right? Because we see it's not theoretical anymore. It's actually something that we see live from groups like APT28. Also, when you review the documentation that was leaked over the cyber operation of the CIA, you see the same thing. Basically, the advanced cyber criminals or the advanced cyber adversaries, they already have malware for PCs, Mac, cloud environments, Android, iOS, smart TVs, and they're looking for the first or the easiest way to get in, and then they propagate from that point. So that actually introduces two interesting issues or challenges when you come to strategize or to architect how you want to protect your mobile assets. The first challenge is that mobile operating systems are different than PCs, right? So you really need something that you really need a solution that is a best of breed solution, that it was designed from the ground up to protect either Android or iOS, because you cannot just take your traditional AV and expect it to work on Android or iOS. It will simply not give you reasonable detection, and it will not give you a reasonable user experience for the user. But the fact that you really need this kind of solution, you really want a mobile threat defense solution, doesn't mean that you need a standalone mobile threat defense solution, because the days of a standalone mobile threat defense solution are long gone, right? Once we see that the adversaries have shifted the way that they attack, a standalone mobile threat defense solution that only is able to cover or understand threats to Android and iOS is irrelevant. It is not aligned with how adversaries work those days. So basically, those two challenges, we started to see those challenges about 18 months ago and start engineering a solution that can solve this problem for our customers, to basically be able to tackle and to provide protection for the new generation of cyber criminals, the way that cyber criminals and adversaries work in 2017, when they go across all the platforms and looking for the way to get in and to basically snatch your proprietary information. Sorry. So the way that we solve this is actually an announcement that we just published 2 weeks ago. It's called a new architecture, Check Point Infinity. And our new architecture basically states a very simple thing. We are going to provide you a consolidated security solution for network, cloud, and mobile that provides you the highest level of threat prevention across all of those platforms. Clearly, you can select to use our technology to protect one of those assets, and yet you will still leverage the other assets, because we were able to bring you threat intelligence from other customers that are using us across the board. In the heart of this technology, of this architecture, is our SandBlast technology. Our SandBlast technology is the industry-leading zero-day protection solution that was vetted by very reputable organizations like NSS to have the best catch rate for unknown threats. And we had our network security, which is basically capabilities that are our next generation threat prevention that runs on our gateways. We have our SandBlast agent that runs on PCs and laptops, Windows-based PCs and laptops. We have our SandBlast Cloud that is able to detect attacks against Office 365 compromises. And what we actually did, we matured our mobile threat prevention product, our best-in-class standalone mobile threat defense solution. We matured it to be part of this family, to be a consolidated offering where we can actually protect you guys end-to-end across all those environments in a single platform. Really, the underlying layer that allows us to do all that is the ability to share common intelligence and threat management across all those platforms. So let's focus about our new announcement, SandBlast Mobile, and basically how we've evolved our mobile threat prevention product to be SandBlast Mobile. and to provide the best zero-day protection for mobile devices, both for Android and iOS. So what SandBlast Mobile is all about? We provide a complete threat detection and mitigation for Android and iOS devices to both detect the threat and remediate the threat. As I'll show you in the next couple of slides, we have a proven best mobile threat catch rate in the industry. And because of the way that we do our detection using behavioral algorithms, we have the full visibility and simple deployment that you can deploy the solution in a very easy way across all of your mobile estate. How does it work? It's quite straightforward. We have an app that is available on the Android Google Play Store, on the iOS App Store, and that app is basically being provisioned to the mobile device of the employees. We actually integrate with all the MDM, EMM platforms. I'll get to that in a couple of slides. And once the device is being provisioned, we are able to detect different threats on the device itself. For example, exploitation of the operating system, advanced jailbreak and routing, network attacks when you connect to a compromised Wi-Fi, and the new capability of detecting SMS attack. Now, clearly, as I mentioned, one of the most complicated problems is actually to detect attacks using applications. For that, we are using our cloud-based behavioral risk engine that is analyzing apps using proprietary algorithms that we developed in-house from the ground up, like detonation of applications in a proprietary sandbox, advanced static code analysis that is able to decompile Android, Java, and iOS Objective-C, and specific machine learning models that are fine-tuned for mobile malware. Now, the last thing is basically that all this is available, all the visibility and the management is available using a real-time intelligence and monitoring console that you consume either on the cloud or on-prem. Now, the most dramatic shift in what we've done over the last 12 months is that we were able to connect all of our proprietary dedicated technology for detecting mobile threats to our threat cloud that syncs all the threat intelligence from the network agent cloud and now mobile. So regardless where we see the first threat, either in the network or on the mobile device or in the PC, when we analyze it, detonate it, and understand what are the IOCs, indication of compromise, that this threat is relying on, we are now able to immunize the entire environment. Now, even if you are not using specifically our SandBlast network technology or SandBlast agent technology, you still leverage our other customers that are opt-in to share their intelligence with our threat cloud, and basically you get this common knowledge from all the platforms in the world to help you to protect your mobile devices. So a few more words about our threat cloud technology. As I said, it's the world's largest indication of compromised database. We have more than 500 million malicious file hashes and websites, 250 million command and control addresses, 11 million malware behavioral signatures. This database is being updated over 5 million times a day. Now, clearly, all those updates, they're basically relying on a huge network of probes, which are based on our gateways. We have over 100,000 gateways deployed worldwide where the customer opt-in to share the threat intelligence and the attacks that they're seeing. And clearly, some of those gateways, we see a lot of mobile activity behind those gateways because customers connect those gateways behind their Wi-Fi infrastructure. Some of those gateways are actually deployed in mobile carriers. So we see all those apps being driven and basically getting through those gateways. And we are the first one that are able to obtain that sample and detonate it. Moreover, keep in mind that unlike other solutions that rely on consumer-based threat intelligence, those gateways allows a direct access to enterprise-level threat intelligence in places that matter to you. Now, This ability and this technology and this progress that we've made helped us to continue and secure our ability to present the best catch rate in the industry. Mircom, a third-party assessment shop, they ran a pretty interesting test a couple of months ago, which was just published a few weeks ago, and they basically analyzed and tested in a stress environment all the mobile threat defense solutions that agreed to participate in their test. You can see here the vendors in the slide. Some vendors from the space didn't agree to participate for whatever reason, but we were the only vendor. Check Point SandBlast Mobile was the only solution that was able to score 100% detection rate against the unknown malware and the known malware that was deployed by Mircom. They actually generated new and fresh malware, which are unknown. There is no signature out there for those malware. They deployed across the different solutions, and we had both a superior catch rate for those unknown and zero-day threats, both on our Android and iOS. And we were the only vendor that actually had no false positives. The interesting thing that other vendors, although some of them had some detection of those threats, they had a huge amount of false positives that what we see is that customers are challenged to deploy a solution with false positives in the large environments. Now, in addition, when you look on publications, right, things that we've published way more zero-day discoveries in the mobile space than any other vendors in this industry, both vulnerabilities and malware, that allows us to get in the Google Security Hall of Fame and receive the SE Magazine Top 25 Threat Seekers Award for 2016. Now, last but not least, statistics about the efficiency of our detection and the reason why what we've done with coupling our mobile-related detection with our overall security operation, our threat cloud, comes in the form or recognition that we received about a month ago when Google released their Android security report for 2016. So the Google security report it's quite a long report, which basically covers the advancement in what Google introduced in terms of security features into their platform, but also towards the end, it covers the biggest and the most important attacks that occurred on the Android ecosystem over 2016. Now, those are the biggest and the most important breaches that Google decided to refer to. And the really interesting and inspiring thing over here is that 70% of those breaches were first discovered by Check Point and disclosed to Google. Now, this is an amazing number. We were the only vendor, basically the only vendor which were able to achieve such a score on an ecosystem of 1.4 billion devices, 70%. I don't think that there is any other vendor, even in other spaces, that is able to claim that he discovered 70% of the major attacks on a particular platform. Now, with the progress of while we clearly made a huge progress of our detection capabilities for Android, for the application network and OS exploitation threats vectors, we've now introduced a couple of new capabilities, really important capabilities. The first capability is basically protection against SMS attack. So it is now released initially for Android devices. What we are able to do is when a user receives a text message, an SMS message with a link, we are able to scan that link. And if that link actually targets the user to a malicious application, to a malicious website that has phishing or drive-by attack, then we are able to show a message to the user, show you guys in your console that this user is being phished, and basically prevent the attack. In addition, we are now came to the point where we have the industry-wide set of integration with MDM vendors. So for a very long time, we already had an integration with AirWatch by VMware, Mobile Iron, and IBM Match 360. But what we actually now done is that we've completed the integration with BlackBerry, both BES 12 and BlackBerry Workspaces, depending if you're using a managed or unmanaged environment. This was driven by two huge financial customers that are using our solutions now combined. We have now completed the integration with Microsoft Intune, which is now available for EA and later this month in GA. And we are going to release Citrix SandMobile towards the end of this quarter. So once in the end of this quarter, we basically will have integration with all the leading EMM platforms across the board, everything that customers are using. So in a nutshell, once we detect it, we basically provide full visibility, and you can actually set policies of how you want your EMM to react to this threat. It's a very simple deployment. Again, with the integration with the EMM platforms, you are able to push the application and configure it with very limited interaction for the end user. We have a very strict privacy collection, or basically information collection of data from the device to maintain the end user privacy, no impact on battery life, and it's very easy to consume our solution. It's very easy to set up because most customers consume it as a SaaS solution. But if you're specifically interested in an on-prem solution because of certain regulations that you have in your territory, we are also able to provide you an on-prem experience where all of your data is actually encapsulated behind the firewalls, or are you still providing protection to mobile devices that are outside your firewalls? So just to summarize the webinar, clearly mobile threats are on the rise. We see that those mobile threats are evolving and are able to now get into our infrastructure. Mobile devices are the weakest link. And basically, Check Point provides you the most advanced security for mobile devices to tackle those mobile threats, which is both where you can consume it as both a standalone solution, but also strategically, you can make a strategic decision to invest in a platform that will protect you against the advanced breaches and the way that adversaries act those days. With that, I would like to thank you for attending this webinar, and I believe that we have a couple of questions that are potentially were not answered.
So Michael, this is Brian. We have a number of questions. I was wondering if you'd care to field them. One viewer asks, what about mobile infections via email?
Yeah, that's a great question. So most of the infections via email, they come of the form of an email that is containing an attachment of an application or a link which drives the user to a website which will drop an application on the mobile device. Or last but not least, it will actually can trigger some exploit on the mobile device. So regardless of the way that the infection goes, we are able to capture the infection or the attack in the point where either the app is being dropped to the mobile device or the point that the device is being exploited. So that vector is covered.
Great, thank you. Raul Esteban Gonzalez asks, is the on-premise solution able to leverage from Threat Cloud IOC data?
Yes. So the way that it actually works is that the analysis of the apps is still being driven by the cloud, and clearly the Threat Cloud database is effective to feed the analysis. But what's actually being provided on-prem is the management console. So the management console is the visibility and where you have all the personal information and the threat information about and all the logs about your customers. But what is being submitted to the cloud is completely anonymized, and then it's actually able to leverage the Threat Cloud database.
Yes, and we have another question. When Check Point has detected an undesirable malicious app, is it able to block and remove this app automatically, or does it just display the warning message and this issue has to be dealt with manually?
That's a great question. So The mitigation capabilities are actually driven by some limitations that are the core of the Android and iOS platforms. And the way that we actually do it is in a very generic way with a collaboration with basically with the integration with the MDM. When we detect that there is a threat, we actually notify the risk engine of the MDM or EMN. So first of all, we notify the administrator, we notify the user, a message pops up on the user screen, but simultaneously, the MDM actually disconnects the device from having access to any corporate assets. So you can configure whatever policy that you want that at least mitigates the impact of that malware on corporate data. And for that, there is no user intervention, right? You don't need to do any manual action. Now, to actually remove the threat on Android devices, yes, the user needs to press one button, which basically instructs the operating system to remove the threat. On iOS, it's actually like, 2 steps, but the messaging is very clear. And keep in mind that during the process that the threat is being sort of removed manually by the user, your data is actually secure, right? Because the MDM was instructed to remove all the data from the mobile device.
Okay, Alan Camello asks, what is the resource overhead and storage overhead with the app? Does it slow down the performance of the device? Also, is there a standalone version to test?
Oh, that's a great question. So first of all, the performance impact is minimal. From a CPU standpoint, which is clearly slow, like this is the technical aspect of for slowdown. It actually consumes less than 2% battery over 24 hours. Okay, so it's really minimal CPU utilization, and the reason for that it's event driven. So we only being triggered when something happens to the device, and when the device changes states, like for example, a new application is being installed. In addition, there is a way to test the storage overhead is also quite minimal. It's a couple of megabytes of storage. It doesn't blows up the storage of the device. And if you're interested to try a standalone version, you can try our Zone Alarm product, our Zone Alarm Mobile Security. Now, keep in mind that the Zone Alarm Mobile Security is not utilizing the advanced detection capabilities. It's basically gives you access to the signatures that we have in our cloud, but it doesn't submit the application to our cloud for detonation. So you will get the same level of user experience, but from a detection standpoint, it's not equivalent. If you actually want to run a test and see the actual thing live, we provide, it's a very simple process. You can contact us on our website or one of our sales representatives, and we spin up a dashboard for you. You have a trial period of 30 days where you can provision a couple dozens of mobile devices, and you can experience and see that the product is working as advertised and the performance is negligible.
One last question, Michael, from Mohammed Ali. What about apps infected with malware such as Silver Push? Does SandBlast Mobile detect apps infected with Silver Push code?
So basically the point is that we are able to analyze all the apps which are being installed on the mobile device, regardless of what they're infected or Trojanized with, and we will be able to upload it to our detection engine. We will detonate them, analyze them, and we will detect that they are being infected with a malicious code.
Well, thank you very much, Michael. That was a very informative presentation. And with that, we are going to conclude our, today's webinar. Any questions that we have not gotten to, we will deal with offline. Thank you very much for your participation.